Hello, I'm Amanda Walker and welcome to Inside America, the show that brings you insight and analysis of the biggest issues facing the United States right now. In today's episode, the inauguration of Donald Trump. We are just days away from the official start of his second presidency. On what's seen as a day of history and hope, what message will he send to the nation? Will it be more upbeat than the last one?
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
We do know there'll be plenty of pomp and ceremony and perhaps some surprises, as past ones have proved even the most well-planned inaugurations can go off script. Here in Washington, D.C., it's been a relatively calm atmosphere as the stage is set for the official transfer of power. It was a different scene 4 years ago when a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol building in an attempt to overturn Joe Biden's victory. Coming up, we ask a former Capitol police officer injured in the attack how he feels about a second Trump inauguration.
Officers who were defending the Capitol on January 6 are the same officers that are going to be protecting him during his inauguration.
And we ask Washingtonians what they make of the months-long build-up to this massive event. What do you think Inauguration Day will be like, second time for Donald Trump?
A happy day.
Terrible.
Yes.
Why?
Because you shouldn't have ever been allowed to run.
So Inauguration Day is the major moment in Washington's political calendar. It's an enduring symbol of the peaceful transfer of power from one president to another. The day is packed with protocol that usually eclipses political divides. Let's take a look back at past inaugurations to get a sense of the magnitude of the occasion and remind you of the ones that stood out for the right and sometimes the wrong reasons.
Inauguration Day is a once every 4 years extravaganza and a bedrock of US democracy. Crowds flock to Washington, D.C. from far and wide for the sheer spectacle of it all. Not to mention some awkward and bizarre moments.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Inauguration speeches have delivered some of the most indelible quotes in US history.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America.
Donald Trump's first inauguration speech struck a dark note.
Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities. Rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs.
Amid the rehearsed speeches, audiences are perhaps even more riveted by the unscripted moments, like former President Bush's battle with his poncho.
Do solemnly swear.
Even the most established protocols can get a little rocky.
President to the United States faithfully.
That I will execute
Faithfully the office of President of the
the
United
office of
States.
President of the United States faithfully.
And will to the best
Barack
of my
Obama took
ability
the oath a second time in private just to make sure it was exactly right.
of the United States.
Such deep-rooted traditions don't fare well with surprises, like Melania Trump's gift for a flummoxed Michelle Obama, who later said she had no idea where to put it. Further back standout moments include President Dwight Eisenhower being lassoed by a cowboy. JFK's parade saw more Wild West antics with an appearance from Buffalo Bill. Those animals fared better than the pigeons at Richard Nixon's inauguration. The bird repellent used to calm his fears about being pooped on resulted in piles of dead birds along the parade route.
America has to be better than this.
The most recent inauguration of Joe Biden was a pared-down COVID-era event. Donald Trump chose not to attend. This time the world is open and it's Martin Luther King Day, a public holiday. So Donald Trump will be hoping for big crowds to quash any debate that surrounded his first inauguration.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
People who are travelling to see it all in person will have to navigate massive security measures. Trump's second inauguration comes at a volatile moment in America. His speech will offer the first clear signal of what he intends to do about it.
Some incredible moments there. So we know at this inauguration, Donald Trump will walk through the Capitol building's lower west tunnel, the scene of some of the worst violence in the attempt to overturn the 2020 election. He'll be on his way to take the oath of office as the 47th President of the United States. Trump himself faced 4 felony charges in connection with January 6th, and he has vowed to pardon some of the defendants when he takes office. One of the police officers defending lawmakers was former Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Gonell, who was so badly injured in the riot he feared he was going to die. He's now retired from duty, and I wanted to get his thoughts about a second Trump inauguration. If you could start, please, just by taking us through your experience of that day. What moments are still with you most today?
I was being crushed, I was being beaten, I was being pulled into the mob to the point that I sustained multiple injuries. My left shoulder, both my hands, and my right foot as well. I ended up needing surgery on the shoulder and the right foot, years of therapy, physical and mental therapy, and that's what we want. We're trying to not have Donald Trump erase that the day was violent, the day was not a full of love like he says, because if they did, then they almost loved me to death of so much love, you know. Some of his supporters were attacking me individually, some of them in conjunction with other. So, you know, it was ongoing for almost 5 hours, fighting for my life and for my colleagues for our democracy.
Who was responsible for that day?
President Trump, obviously, because without him invoking the mob, the people to rally on January 6th, then nothing of that would have happened. But then you had the people who were gullible enough to believe his lies, that they took his word over facts that something was wrong and that they needed to fight for him.
So what goes through your mind when you consider the reality that Donald Trump inspired those rioters, but he will be taking the oath of office in that same place in a very short period of time?
I expected the American people to hold him accountable, but unfortunately, I was wrong. You know, which begs the question: what did I risk my life for? If that's how they're going to reward somebody who tried to rip the Constitution and punish me and my colleagues for defending the Constitution. That's the irony or great price that we have paid. Those who defended the Capitol and our democracy, we have been ostracized and blamed for making a political takeover attack on the Capitol and make it supposedly political. Well, it is political.
So most people watched on TV, but you were up close with these rioters in the most traumatic way from what you've described. What's your reaction to Donald Trump's plan to pardon the defendants?
You know, Donald Trump is going to do what Donald Trump does. He doesn't care about feelings of other people. He's see people as useful idiots, and the minute that he will get tired of somebody, who will begin blaming that person or those people for whatever reason or issues they have. I do have issues with him pardoning those people who attacked the police officer. Again, he claims to be the biggest supporter of the police and law and order, and yet he's about to pardon more than 1,500 people who attack police officers in the line of duty while protecting our democracy. And instead of apologizing to the officers, he won't do that. He won't do that. He's going to praise the actions of the January 6 rioters.
And just finally, Aquilino, what will you be doing on Inauguration Day?
Probably be at home, being not listening to what he says, because at the end of the day, he's going to be praising the actions of those who committed violent crimes on his behalf, and then he's going to be a vindictive person. He's going to go after the people who actually did their job, people who love this country, people who fulfill their oath, like myself. And I don't need to. He's the president. At the end of the day, look, some of the officers who were defending the Capitol on January 6th are the same officers that are going to be protecting him during his inauguration. The irony of that is that he will never apologize to those officers. He will never apologize to me for losing my career and my health.
That was former Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Gonell talking about the betrayal he feels towards Trump's inauguration. Before we get into a discussion about what we can expect from it, let's spare a thought for the people of Washington, D.C. They've been navigating security barriers for months now. The inaugural platform's ceremonial driving of the first nail, yes, that is a thing, took place back in September, and sidewalks around Lafayette Park next to the White House behind us have been closed since October. I went down there to see how people are faring. So beyond this barrier, and then beyond the white viewing stand, and then beyond a few more barriers, is the White House. And this has been as close as you can get for a few months now. It's a big disappointment for tourists, and it's an inconvenience for people who work in this area. When you look here at all this preparation for this big event that Donald Trump's going to be the center of, what do you feel?
Sad. Sad because we shouldn't be celebrating a person like that, ever, anywhere.
What will
any
you
country.
be doing on Inauguration Day?
I don't know. Probably just trying to avoid it.
You're here visiting?
Yeah.
You can't get very close, can you?
Yeah. Wish I want to see the White House, but it's not the moment for right now.
No White House selfies today?
No White House selfies today.
How are you feeling about the inauguration?
I mean, I'm indifferent. I've voted on the opposite end, so I'm just ready for the 4 years to pass, so I can't say that I'm excited for sure.
Will you be lining these streets?
No, ma'am. Not at all. Will not be watching, will not be supporting, so.
What do you think Inauguration Day will be like, second time for Donald Trump?
A happy day. I'm a Trump vote. I'm a Trump. So.
Will you be watching?
Yeah, I'm going to watch, of course.
Very excited.
You are? Will you be watching?
We will be.
So, what will people make of the day itself? Will we be talking about dark messages of American carnage, or as Trump himself has suggested, are we going to get a speech about unity? Joining me to discuss this and more is NPR radio host Todd Zwillich and Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report. Thank you both for joining us. Jessica, can I start with you? Tell us about this transition period. I read the other day that before 1933, it was actually 4 months. It feels like we've been waiting a long time since Election Day, a mere 75 days now. What is that period about? What happens during it?
Yeah, Trump has even suggested that he thinks it should be shorter, but this occurs over the holidays. There is a process that these people have to go through, even though the incoming Trump administration has thwarted some of that process. That's the reason why, even though the new Congress is now in session, that there is a delay in moving in some of his cabinet nominees because they have not submitted the typical FBI background checks, with Trump attacking the deep state, skeptical of these processes and different things. There is in typical Trump fashion, there is wanting to sort of go around this, go in his own direction. So, the checks and balances in a way that they have to go through for these nominees have not fully been processed. So there are some of the nominees that they might be able to move on day one, some of the least controversial, including, Florida Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, expected to pass with bipartisan support. But then, Tulsi Gabbard at the Department of National Intelligence, Director of National Intelligence, still facing some backlash, Pete Hegseth, and different things. So, there's staffing for the new administration, and he came out very quickly to announce these people on social media. But again, some of the, dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's has not fully been done yet.
And Todd, Trump was pretty clear in his messaging on the campaign trail: mass deportations, close the border, tariffs. What have we heard from him during this transition period?
His aides have been talking to the press and informing people to expect shock and awe, their words, on day one. Executive orders. Here, presidents have different levers of power. They can go to Congress and pass a law, or they can issue executive orders doing things that presidents can do on their own. And the things the presidents can do on their own often center around immigration, other areas. They have warned the press, maybe warned isn't the right word, but informed the press to expect shock and awe. 100 executive orders or more. Yes, immigration, deportations will be on the list, other areas as well. And I think that the aim here is, as Donald Trump often does, as he's done during this transition period, to disorient people, to confuse people. Authoritarianism is one of the denominators of Donald Trump's leadership style, and authoritarians around the world like to participate in shock and awe. They like to disorient news media, experts, voters, historians, people around them. And I think you're going to see a lot of that on day one.
More talk, though, about the likes of Greenland and the Panama Canal, perhaps, than people were expecting.
And taking over Canada. Yes, I think that Trump has, as Todd said, was sort of this authoritarian vision that, we would talk about manifest destiny of the U.S. in the past. I think he has this idea of, it seems to be an expansion of this America First policy of, if he could expand countries and take them over, but that's what we see, Russia doing and different things. So, I think that a lot of that, we take it as talk, and when you've asked Republican senators in recent days about this, they've sort of, dismissed the idea as just sort of Trump grandiosity and different things. But, it is, he will get on these tangents of things that actually do require an act of Congress to take over a country or different things. And then even, Politico did an interesting look at, if they were to take over Canada, it would actually be a very Democratic area, and that he would then lose the Electoral College. So all of these things may sound great, and we're going to expand the U.S. in these things. And then in practice, I think there is still systems in place that rein him in to an extent, but I think we're certainly going to see him push the bounds of the executive office as much as he can.
We should also say on day one, in addition to immigration, the president does have the power under the Constitution to pardon federal crimes.
Right.
He has said on day one that he will pardon January 6th defendants, the people who went to the Capitol to try to help him steal the election in 2020, and I think we can expect that as well.
Well, let's talk about that in the frame of the inauguration, known as Democracy's Day. Donald Trump is going to be front and center of it, obviously. 4 years ago, he was encouraging a mob who stormed that very seat of democracy. So with that contrast in mind, this is going to be a tough inauguration for a lot of Americans to swallow, right? With that in mind.
I think so. I think for Americans who still have an eye on what elections mean in this country, what democracy means to Americans, what participation means, it should be a difficult day. Now, lots of people, a majority of the country, voted for Donald Trump, and that's fine. That was their choice. He legitimately ran and he legitimately won. But I hope that they're also thinking through what the country has sacrificed during Donald Trump's rise and occupation of politics. You know, during the last transition, when Joe Biden won the election and Donald Trump had failed, he did not attend the inauguration of his predecessor. By the way, Joe Biden will attend Donald Trump's. He was busy amassing boxes of personal effects and classified documents, which he took with him to Mar-a-Lago. He was charged with dozens of felonies. Now, that case was dismissed for technical reasons, but the contrast is important, and it's astounding. He was amassing classified documents that he did not have a right to take and was charged with federal crimes for taking them. That's what he was doing at this time 4 years ago.
Well, and as Todd said, there is a deference that Biden has shown to Trump, that he invited him to the White House. He said he will be there at the inauguration. Kamala Harris will be there at the inauguration. You know, we've had tough elections in the past, you know, the Bush and Gore in 2000 and different things. That was another very contested election. But again, Trump did not show that same deference to Biden, but Biden and Harris will be showing it to him.
Is that going to make for some awkward moments during Trump's inauguration? Do you think? We know there are just a huge number of tensions within the people who will be attending. Do you think they'll manage to get over some of that?
I mean, I think that there is a respect for democracy and a respect for the peaceful transfer of power that these people showed that, again, Trump did not show. But, you know, you will have former presidents there. You know, you had former President Bush at the last Trump inauguration, sort of saying things, and you could sort of read on his face. I think it depends on which kind of tone he takes, as you said at the outset. If this is sort of another sort of American carnage moment and different things, there are some politicians that don't have the best poker face. There are others that are more practiced, that we could say them, you know, saying things on background to reporters and afterwards. But you know, while Trump says this is going to be a message of unity, I'm brought back to the Republican National Convention, where he said that was sort of going to be the same thing, that he was going to, you know, speak briefly, and that he had sort of been a changed man after the assassination attempt and different things. And that speech ended up being unwieldy and going off onto tangents and different things. I mean, he will have a teleprompter, and this will be a written speech, but I think that if anything about, you know, the past decade that we've now seen Trump be at the spotlight, he doesn't change. I mean, I think that while he may have inclinations to sort of rein in, and certainly, you know, his incoming chief of staff, who was his campaign manager, Susie Wiles, is a more seasoned politician and certainly has had more discipline on the campaign than he had in his previous two. He is still Trump at the end, and he will say what he wants to, no matter what is written on that teleprompter.
So, Todd, what's your best guess for what we'll be talking about on the other side of this inauguration in terms of the content and the tone?
On the other side, you mean the first days of this presidency?
Yeah, what will we be saying about the inauguration that we've all just witnessed?
Oh, about the inauguration itself. Well, Donald Trump does love pomp and circumstance, and he loves to be the center of attention, and no one is more the center of attention than the President of the United States on Inauguration Day. So he's likely to behave, I think. He's likely to probably stick to the script.
Which he usually does when he's winning, right?
When he's winning, yeah, when things are going his way. Unity message, I'm not sure, and if he had one, I'm not sure what it would mean, frankly. I think in the opening days of this administration, I'm watching for a couple of things. Executive orders, chaos, disorder, confusion and disorientation, as we've discussed. I think also it's important for people to view Donald Trump. Now, he is the President of the United States. He does have enormous power. He is the Commander-in-Chief. He is also the most important disinformation source and propagandist probably on planet Earth now. Just in recent days, we saw a terrorist attack in New Orleans. In a time of crisis that has international implications, what the President says matters. Somebody inspired by ISIS, what the President says matters. Donald Trump's first choice for public comments was to lie about immigration and lie about crime. We've seen terrible fires in Los Angeles that have burned down thousands and thousands of homes. A moment of crisis. It matters what the President says. Donald Trump's choice has been to attack his political enemies, lie about their record, and lie about infrastructure for his own political purposes. I say all this not as an attack on Donald Trump, but as a diagnosis. He is a very salient, very important source of disinformation. And I think as he enters his second term as presidency, people around the world will do well to view him that way, to understand when he makes pronouncements in moments of high public attention, like an inauguration, that his word or his pronouncements aren't to be trusted until proven true. And I say that because he has a long, long track record. That's a diagnosis of his behavior, and for me, that's the watchword of the first months of his presidency.
We're almost out of time, but I need to ask you both very quickly about crowd size, because unbelievably, that is what we were talking about as a headline after the last inauguration. Do you think we'll be talking about that again? It's a public holiday. There's no excuse for people not turning out. Do you think Donald Trump will get a good turnout for this inauguration? And will he be as obsessed with that as he was last time?
I think he is still going to be obsessed with it. I mean, certainly, Biden's occurred during the midst of the pandemic and different things. So, he's going to try to compare it to Obama's again. I mean, he did win a majority of the vote this time. So I think, it just depends on how many people will travel to see and, again, snow and different things. I think one thing that reports say that he has been agitated about is that, we're having former President Carter's funeral flags will still be at half-mast.
He's not happy about
well,
that, right?
So, yes.
I mean, that's quite something.
Which I think helps explain why he's been making bellicose statements about attacking Panama and Greenland while the country was focused on Jimmy Carter's funeral. I think Donald Trump probably didn't like that. Look, crowd size, he may get a very good one. He probably will. And if he doesn't, he's likely to lie about it like he did before.
Right. Todd, Jessica, thanks both so much for your time. Well, when the ceremony is over, the real work of being president begins. And if the previous Trump tenure was anything to go by, 2025 will be eventful. But we'll do our best to keep track of it all on Inside America. Join us next time. Thanks for watching.